You said this year would be different, that you would finally commit, that you would wake up early, take action daily, eat with discipline, and train your body like a man who respects himself. And for a few days, maybe even a few weeks, you did. But then the drift returned, the doubt whispered, and once again you stopped. You don't need more goals. You don't need another planner. You don't need to write it down again. You need to understand why you keep quitting on yourself. You need to face the invisible pattern that has ruled your life for years. You need to see that the reason you restart is because you have not yet become the man who finishes. You are not weak. You are not cursed. You are not lazy. You are simply untrained in mental law. And until you master the law, you will repeat the same season under a new name again and again. 365 days promised, 17 days completed. Regret by February, silence by March. But that ends now. This is not another speech to inspire you. This is a system to transform you. If you listen, not casually, but with urgency, with spiritual obedience, with the decision of a man who is done starting over, you will learn how to obey your purpose with unbreakable consistency, finish what you start without relying on emotion, build an identity so strong failure cannot attach to you, train your mind to act daily, whether it feels like it or not, control your thoughts, your voice, and your environment, and break the cycle of quitting and never go back again. The man who masters this law becomes dangerous. He becomes calm. He becomes structured. He walks with the posture of someone who knows what he's building and will not stop until it is done. You've had the desire, you've had the vision, you've made the promises. Now it is time to become the man who completes the promise. But be warned, if you walk away from this message, you may drift for another year, another decade. But if you listen and obey, everything will change. This is the dividing line. Now ask yourself, are you ready to finally become the man who never starts over again? Then listen and do not drift. Part 1, the invisible pattern. Why you always return to zero. If your life feels like a series of restarts, if your ambition roars in January but dies in silence by February, if you make promises to act, to train, to speak with discipline, to rise early, to build your business, to fix your habits, and yet you keep returning to the same place, then let us remove all illusions. You are not lazy. You are undisciplined in identity. Men confuse effort with structure. They confuse desire with law. They confuse excitement with transformation. But no man has ever built lasting wealth, character, or dominion by excitement. He has done it by obeying invisible laws with visible action. You do not rise by emotion. You rise by obedience to law. Men hear truth all the time. They nod. They agree. They underline it in a book. But their life never changes. Why? Because they heard it, but they did not listen. To hear is passive. To listen is to act. To listen is to change your environment. To destroy the door back to failure. To build a new pattern from the inside out. And I must warn you, if you do not finish this message, if you drift midway through, if you allow distraction to interrupt the very voice you claimed you needed, you will repeat the same pattern again. And not because you are weak, but because you are still governed by the old law inside your mind. God does not bless indecision. The law cannot reward hesitation. The door you seek will not open for a man who still negotiates with excuses. But when a man becomes definite, everything begins to obey him. Time, energy, people, provision, doors, they all move when you do. But you must move in law. Let us begin. Because until this cycle is broken, your future will remain chained to your past. And no plan, no goal, no journal, no diet, no business scheme will survive unless the invisible pattern within you is broken and rebuilt. This is the truth few want to face. You always return to zero because you have trained yourself to do so. Not consciously, not with intent, but through repetition. You start, you drift, you fall, and you start again. And over time, this becomes your identity. And identity is law. Identity governs behavior. You must stop thinking you can change your life with more effort. You cannot. You change your life by changing the structure that controls your behavior. And that structure is built in thought, in word, and in repetition. What you say daily, what you allow daily, what you believe silently, that is the law of your life. There is a name for this in the invisible realm. I have called it the law of cosmic habit force. It is the spiritual law that cements repetition into rhythm. It is why failure repeats, why success multiplies, why you can sabotage a goal even while wanting it with your heart. Because your subconscious follows your pattern, not your desire. In my own life, I delayed the publishing of Think and Grow Rich, not because I lacked content, but because I had not yet killed the pattern of self-doubt, perfectionism, and delay. The book was ready, but I was not. And the world had to wait until I became definite, until my identity matched my assignment. This is not weakness. It is lawlessness in the mind. You want results that are built in law, but your daily life is governed by moods, whims, and inconsistency. And so the results never last. They rise for a moment, and then they die in silence. And so you restart again and again, but no more. Say this aloud now. I no longer tolerate patterns that kill my vision. I now command my direction through obedience to law. You must see the trap to escape it. And the trap is emotional-based identity. The man who acts only when he feels like it is doomed to repeat failure. Because emotion is undisciplined. Emotion is momentary. Emotion is shaped by environment. But the man who builds identity by law, he cannot be moved. You must start to see your repeated failures not as random, but as spiritual habit loops. They are rehearsed. They are reinforced. And every time you quit, you tell your subconscious, this is who I am. And then you act it out again. Not because you hate progress, but because your identity does not match your goal. You have become good at starting. You have become skilled at recommitting. You have mastered declaring change. But the man who succeeds is not the man who starts loud. It is the man who becomes so rooted in law that his behavior becomes automatic. That is the man who finishes. This invisible pattern is not broken by emotion. It is broken by structure. You must wake at the same hour. Think the same focused thoughts. Speak your definite chief aim aloud morning and night. You must train your mind like you would train a wild beast, with repetition and force. And I must tell you, the man who still entertains distraction cannot break this cycle. If your phone, your environment, your acquaintances have more power over you than your inner command, you will lose again, not because the goal is impossible, but because your allegiance is divided. The mind must be directed like an army. It must be commanded by thought. It must be filled with order. Because if you do not dominate it, it will drift. And when it drifts, it will return to the last program it obeyed. That program is failure until you replace it with identity. Say it again with me. I no longer tolerate patterns that kill my vision. I now command my direction through obedience to law. This is the moment where you stop making decisions based on how you feel and start making them based on who you must become. If you only act when it is convenient, you will never escape the cycle. But when you act because it is required, then law rewards you. You are not your old story. You are not your last attempt. You are what you decide today, and your mind is waiting to be told what is now law. But law must be enforced. It must be written, spoken, enforced in habit until identity is rewired. And once identity is rewired, you will no longer start over, because the new man does not return to the old path. He walks in a straight line. He walks in completion. He walks in fire. He walks as one who knows he was born to finish what he begins. Part 2, the break in belief. How inconsistency is always a faith issue. Men search for reasons why they quit. They blame their schedule, their obligations, their energy. But no man has ever quit something he truly believed in. What a man does not believe, he will not finish. What he doubts internally, he will eventually walk away from, no matter how much he proclaims it aloud. You do not suffer from inconsistency. You suffer from unbelief. You start with force, but your faith has cracks. And when pressure rises, those cracks begin to leak discipline, clarity, and will. You stop not because it's hard, but because you did not decide to believe before it got hard. Faith is not emotion. Faith is not energy. Faith is not the fire you feel on day one. Faith is the decision you make when nothing is working. Faith is obedience to law, even when the ground is dry, the door is shut, the results are slow. The man who waits for proof never finishes. You say, I want to believe, but belief is not something you feel into. It is something you obey into. You do not wait for belief. You train it. You declare it. You speak it aloud before the results appear. The man who waits to believe will be buried in delay for decades. Doubt is not passive. It is rot. And if it is not identified and replaced, it eats your persistence from the inside. You still move, but slowly. You still act, but without power. You still speak, but without conviction, and soon you stop. Because you never truly believed you could finish. Look at Henry Ford. He was mocked, called a fool, told it couldn't be done. But Ford never required validation. His belief was not an emotion. It was an inner law. He decided that his vision was true before anyone else saw it, and so the world eventually had no choice but to yield. This is the level of belief required if you want to break the cycle. You must become the man who believes before he sees. You must build the image of success in your mind so clearly that when doubt knocks, it finds no room left to rent in your heart. Say this aloud now. I do not need more proof. I decide to believe without it. I act as if it is done. You keep quitting because your belief has never been made unquestionable. You still seek permission. You still check the winds. You still wait for applause. But the law rewards only the decided man, the man who walks as if the result has already bowed before him. And belief must be defended every day, in thought, in word, in silence. You must rise each morning and choose again. I believe, I obey, I persist. If you do not repeat it, your mind will default to the old path. That path leads to drift, to hesitation, to failure. The subconscious mind does not care what is true. It obeys what is repeated. If you repeat doubt, you program failure. If you repeat belief, even before seeing a result, your mind begins to expect the result. And what is expected with belief will eventually manifest. Every man is given two choices: live by faith or live by fear. Faith walks through delay and keeps moving. Fear pauses, hesitates, and returns to safety. And every time you choose fear, you weaken your ability to commit again. This is not motivational, it is spiritual mechanics. You must remove from your life everything that feeds your doubt. Voices, news, habits, distractions, cut them. Anything that makes you hesitate must be destroyed. Because hesitation is the assassin of dreams, and belief cannot survive in an environment of compromise. You are not unmotivated. You are undecided. And until you decide to believe without seeing, your results will rise and fall with your emotions. But the man who walks in law acts regardless of appearance. Because he no longer serves emotion, he serves decision. You say, I'll try. You must say, it is done. You say, we'll see. You must say, I already see it in my mind. You say, I hope. You must say, I command it through faith and persistence. Your words reveal your belief, and what you declare daily becomes law. Say it again with me. I do not need more proof. I decide to believe without it. I act as if it is done. The man who decides once and never reopens that decision, he is the man who becomes unstoppable. Because no wind can change his direction. No voice can silence his obedience. No delay can break his pace. He does not require signs. He is the sign. This is how you break the cycle of failure. Not with another system. Not with a new journal. Not with better strategy. But with unquestionable belief, chosen and reinforced every single day. until it becomes your nature, until it becomes your law. And when belief becomes law in your life, discipline is no longer a burden. It is your normal. It is how you move, speak, and command your world. You will no longer start over because you will not doubt again. The old you is gone. The indecisive you is buried. The faithful man has risen. Part 3, the drift habit. Why you sabotage your own momentum. The greatest enemy of achievement is not hardship. It is not lack of knowledge. It is not even failure. The greatest enemy is drift. It is subtle, slow, and invisible. It begins as postponement. It masks itself as rest. It arrives with good reason, but once it takes root, it steals your direction and blinds your urgency. Drift never arrives with warning. It slips in when the fire cools. It sits next to you during comfort. It whispers after a victory, just for today, take it easy. And that single permission begins the cycle again. You stop repeating your aim, you forget why you began, and then you fall, not from force, but from silence. In Outwitting the Devil, I exposed drift as the devil's favorite method. Not temptation, not crisis, but drift. Why? Because drift requires no sin, no crime, no rebellion, just indecision. The man who drifts does not need to be destroyed. He is already surrendered. He walks in circles, though he believes he's moving forward. Let me ask you directly, have you felt it? That invisible resistance when it's time to act. The hesitation before doing what you know must be done. That voice that says, you've done enough for now. That voice is not your friend. It is the language of drift, and if you entertain it, you will bury your own progress. Drift is not laziness. It is a habit of spiritual hesitation. It is the loss of direction, not the loss of energy. It is when a man allows environment to command him instead of commanding his environment. It is not weakness. It is the absence of definiteness. And no man can succeed without a fixed aim. This is why you sabotage your own momentum. Because once the feeling fades, you have no structure left. You built your action on emotion, not purpose. But purpose must be decided in advance and reinforced through daily obedience. Otherwise, your mind will revert to drift and call it rest. Say this aloud with me. I do not drift. I fix my mind daily on my chief aim and walk in obedience to it. Men start businesses with vision, but stop after the applause fades. They begin disciplines, but quit once discomfort rises. They commit to health, but break it when convenience knocks. Why? Not because the goal was wrong, but because the man did not master drift. The man who breaks the drift habit does not ask, how do I feel today? He asks, what is required of me today? He does not wait for inspiration. He moves in repetition. He speaks his aim aloud when no one watches. He guards his mind. He refuses delay. He understands that every day he drifts, his dream bleeds. Thomas Edison endured 10,000 failed attempts, not because he was superhuman, but because he had no room left in his mind for drift. His definiteness was so fixed that delay could not discourage him. Criticism could not bend him. Discomfort could not stop him, because his vision was more real than his feelings. And that is what you must build. A mind so definite that when drift tries to enter, it finds a closed door. No access, no permission, no negotiation. The man who walks with purpose does not need motivation. He is possessed by his aim. His habits do not ask for approval. They obey inner law. You must now remove the triggers of drift, the distractions, the idle conversations, the environments that feed passivity. You must cut away every doorway to comfort that weakens your command, because every moment spent in drift must be paid for in delay. The cost of drift is not just lost time, it is lost identity. Every day you drift, you tell your mind that direction is optional, and if direction is optional, then discipline becomes impossible. Drift does not only delay the goal, it weakens the man. Say it again with me. I do not drift. I fix my mind daily on my chief aim and walk in obedience to it. There is no partial escape from this. You are either definite or you are drifting. There is no middle path. A man cannot walk with purpose on some days and with distraction on others. He must choose one. And if you do not choose, drift chooses for you. Drift leads to apathy. Apathy leads to confusion. Confusion leads to guilt. Guilt leads to surrender. And so you find yourself a month later wondering what happened again. And the cycle begins anew until the day you burn the bridges to drift and declare new law within yourself. You must now repeat your chief aim every morning and every night. Not sometimes, not when it feels powerful, but always. You must repeat it until it governs your speech, your movement, your thinking, until no part of you is available for drift. And this is not just strategy, it is spiritual protection. The man who lives in definiteness is guarded. His mind is aligned, his thoughts are fortified. Drift cannot enter a soul that is already commanded by decision. The devil flees the man who is occupied by purpose. Drift is the destroyer of empires, and it begins with small permissions. Tomorrow, later, just one day off. These are not harmless phrases, they are seeds. And once they grow, they wrap around your energy like weeds. They choke your vision until you forget you ever had one, but you remember now. That is why you are still listening. Because part of you knows that nothing will change until drift is destroyed. You cannot build a future with one hand on purpose and the other in procrastination. You must release the second. You must become unavailable to drift. Say it aloud again. I do not drift. I fix my mind daily on my chief aim and walk in obedience to it. There is no second life. There is no alternate season. There is only this one. And if you do not take command of it now, it will be spent in delay disguised as effort. But the man who destroys drift becomes a law to himself. He finishes what he begins. He commands his environment, and life submits. Part 4, the identity gap. You keep starting over because you have not become the man who finishes. You do not have a discipline problem. You do not have a strategy problem. You have an identity gap. You keep starting over because your actions are not anchored to who you believe yourself to be. And no matter how powerful your plan is, your life will always follow your identity, not your effort. You don't need more willpower. You need a new self-image. You must become the man who finishes, not just the one who desires, who begins, who proclaims, the one who crosses the line. And until your inner man reflects the end result, you will always fall back into the image of the man who quits. This is the truth most men refuse to face. They speak with the voice of ambition, but they still think with the identity of mediocrity. And what you think about yourself in silence will always defeat what you speak aloud in public, because your results obey your subconscious, not your declarations. A man may write his chief aim on paper, yet if in his thoughts he still sees himself as weak, behind, inconsistent, then that aim is already buried. You must build a new picture of who you are before you try to walk into the vision, because the man who still thinks like a failure will find a way to fail. Charles M. Schwab did not become the steel magnate of his time by accident. He was born to an average family, but he refused to think average. He walked into boardrooms before anyone took him seriously, but he took himself seriously. His identity was forged long before his name was known. The outer world catches up to the man who first becomes within. You must stop chasing success and start embodying the version of yourself that is already trusted with it. Because until you become the man mentally, emotionally, spiritually, you will sabotage every opportunity handed to you. Say this aloud now. I am the man who finishes. I do not restart, I complete. My actions serve my new identity. Behavior is not random. It is the outgrowth of self-perception. If you see yourself as the man who falls off after 30 days, you will. If you see yourself as the man who loses interest after progress slows, You will. If you believe you are the man who never follows through, then you are. And that belief will become law. You must tear down the image of the quitter. You must bury the story of inconsistency. You must write a new mental biography. A man who obeys law. A man who builds rhythm. A man who is not available for old excuses. A man who finishes what he begins, because that is who he is now. The mistake is thinking your past behavior defines you. It does not. The only thing that defines you is the voice you obey now. And when that voice begins to say, I finish, I do not drift, I command my day, I complete what I start, then every thought, habit, and result must align with that new man. The subconscious mind only asks, who am I serving today? And it serves the voice it hears most often. If that voice is guilt, doubt, and regret, it will build in that image. If that voice is confidence, clarity, and decision, it will rebuild your life to reflect it. The choice is daily, and the voice must be enforced. You do not need to try harder. You need to become different. You need to wake up and speak as the man who cannot be moved by circumstance, who no longer repeats apologies for drifting, who no longer negotiates with delay, who no longer entertains the identity of a man he buried in silence. And you must act accordingly. Do not wait until you feel like the man who finishes. Begin to move like him, speak like him, plan like him, cut distractions like him, guard your mind like him. You don't become him through waiting. You become him through obedience to identity before it fully feels real. Say it again with me. I am the man who finishes. I do not restart. I complete. My actions serve my new identity. This is how the cycle ends. Not by changing what you do, but by changing who you are when you do it. If you want new fruit, plant new seed. And the most powerful seed is self-definition. If you say it daily, live it hourly, and act without compromise, your reality will eventually bow to your command. You are not waiting for transformation. You are speaking it into form. You are not starting another cycle. You are closing the gate to failure. You are now becoming the man who must be obeyed by habit, by emotion, by circumstance, because your voice has become law in your own life. This is no longer about motivation. This is about dominion. The man who commands himself cannot be ruled by the past. The man who sees himself as victorious cannot tolerate delay. The man who has become cannot be broken, because his identity is no longer up for debate. From this moment forward, you finish. Not because it's easy, not because it's convenient, but because it is required by the man you are now. You finish because you said you would, and what you say, you obey. And what you obey, you become. Part 5. The definite chief aim. Why starting without direction guarantees failure. A man without direction is a man without power. And I say to you now, if you do not have a definite chief aim written, repeated, and burned into your subconscious mind, you are walking in circles. You may be busy, you may be talented, but you are still lost. Because energy without direction always leads to destruction. You do not drift because you are weak. You drift because you are unclear. The mind will not obey a vague command. The subconscious will not assist a blurred image. And infinite intelligence will not deliver riches into the hands of a man who has not first declared exactly what he intends to do with them. This is not theory. This is spiritual law. The mind is like a field. It can grow weeds or it can grow harvest. But it cannot produce anything until the seed is specific. I want to be successful is not a seed. I want to be healthy is not a seed. These are wishes, dreams, smoke. You must now plant law. Your definite chief aim is the cornerstone of your success. It is the fixed point from which all plans emerge. It is the measuring rod for every yes and no in your day. It governs your speech, your habits, your friends, your schedule. It becomes your inner law, and once obeyed, it transforms your world. When Andrew Carnegie challenged me to write down my life's definite purpose in a single sentence, I resisted. It seemed too small a thing to matter, but I was wrong. That sentence became the blueprint for Think and Grow Rich. That sentence burned away indecision, drift, and confusion. When I read that statement every morning and every night aloud with feeling, it began to reprogram my thoughts. It did not just change my goals, it changed me. It built the identity of the man who could carry the vision. And until you do the same, you will continue to start over in circles. Say this aloud now. My aim is definite. My plan is daily. I walk toward it with focus and unshakable decision. A man who has no chief aim cannot persist, because he does not know what he's persisting for. And without a fixed target, pain becomes unbearable. Sacrifice feels pointless. Discipline feels cruel. But the man who knows his aim welcomes the pressure, because he sees where it's leading. Let me ask you directly, where are you going? Not what do you want. Where are you going? Can you describe it? Can you measure it? Can you see it in your mind's eye? Hear it when you speak? Feel it when you walk? Or are you still drifting, making vague promises with no inner command? Definiteness is not just clarity, it is power. It gives your subconscious instructions. It alerts infinite intelligence. It cuts off distraction. It makes you dangerous to doubt. The moment you become definite, life begins to move in obedience to your voice. The heavens and the earth await your decision. This is why every man who fails ultimately suffers from one root illness, vagueness. He tries many things. He begins with passion. He burns bright and then burns out, because no fire can be sustained without focus, and no man can endure without a clear end in mind. You must now write your definite chief aim, not tomorrow, not next week. Now you must speak it aloud, morning and night, with faith, with energy, with decision. Even if you do not yet feel like the man who can achieve it, declare it until you become him. Speak it until your subconscious obeys. Let this be your law. I, your name, demand of myself that I accomplish exact aim by exact time frame, in return for which I render what you will give in exchange. I believe I will receive it. I see it in my mind. I act daily toward its fulfillment, and I do not quit until it is done. And this statement must not be decoration. It must become your obsession. Carry it with you. Memorize it. Let it dominate your morning. Let it end your night. Let it burn away every distraction, excuse, and competing voice. This is not a sentence. It is a command to your spirit. Say it again with me now. My aim is definite. My plan is daily. I walk toward it with focus and unshakable decision. A man who writes his aim, repeats it, believes it, and acts on it without delay is a man who cannot be defeated. He may fall, but he will rise. He may stumble, but he never stops. Because the vision inside him is stronger than the world around him. He is pulled forward by purpose. You are not far. You are not behind. You are simply undefined. And now you must choose. Either go another year, wandering, wondering, waiting, or write the law of your life and obey it as if your destiny depends on it, because it does. All success begins with definiteness of purpose. Stop seeking magic in books, in routines, in systems. All of them are useless without a fixed target. You must now declare what you were born to do, because the man who declares with authority and acts with faith becomes the man who cannot be ignored by the world. Part 6, the emotional escape. How feelings become your excuse to quit. You did not stop because it was too hard. You did not stop because it was impossible. You stopped because you gave permission to a feeling. And the moment a man allows feeling to override principle, he has surrendered to the oldest trap in existence, emotional escape. Emotion was never meant to lead. It was meant to be governed. And the man who does not govern his emotion will be governed by it. He will call tiredness truth. He will call discouragement divine guidance. He will mistake weakness for wisdom. And he will build his life around what he feels, not what is required. Every time you started strong and then faded, you blamed discipline. But it was not a discipline failure, it was an identity surrendered to emotion, because when a man has decided who he is, he acts from principle, not permission. He does not ask how he feels, he commands what he does. Let us speak plainly. Every time you quit, you believed the lie of emotion, that it was too much, that it didn't matter, that no one would know, that maybe next week would be better, that one slip was acceptable. And so you slipped, and then you surrendered and called it starting over. This is why repetition is king, because you do not rise through emotion, you rise through structure. You win by walking when it feels dead. You act when it feels pointless. You train when it feels heavy, because you no longer trust your feelings, you trust your decision. Thomas Edison did not birth the electric light by following emotion. He was mocked, he was misunderstood, he endured 10,000 failures, but he did not walk by how he felt, he walked by law. And when emotion screamed, "Give up," his identity whispered, "Continue." Say this aloud now. My feelings do not rule me. I act from decision. I persist until the result is done. Emotions are visitors. Laws are residents. And the man who builds his house on visitors is destined to fall. But the man who builds it on spiritual law, on principle, repetition, and daily obedience, he becomes unshakable. His results rise not from passion, but from persistence. You must now rewire your understanding of obedience. Obedience is not slavery, it is power. To obey your chief aim when your feelings want to delay is the highest form of authority. Because now you have become master of yourself, and the man who masters himself cannot be broken by the world. How many dreams have died because you felt tired? How many goals were abandoned because you felt alone? How many days were wasted because you felt behind? And every one of those emotions came, and then they left. But the damage remained, because you gave emotion the final vote. This ends now. From this moment forward, you must act even when you feel nothing. You must complete your habits, whether you feel like a champion or a failure. You must repeat your chief aim even when your voice trembles, because the act of obedience is how you transform the identity. Emotion can no longer be your compass. Decision is your compass. Vision is your compass. The man you are becoming is your compass. And feelings are just clouds. They pass, they change, they deceive. But law remains, and the man who walks in law cannot fall for long. Say it again with me. My feelings do not rule me. I act from decision. I persist until the result is done. Let us be clear. If you continue to seek permission from emotion, you will repeat the cycle for the rest of your life. Not because you're weak, but because you never built your days around principle. And until you do, every failure will look like fatigue, when in truth it was emotional escape. You must now set a law within yourself. I do not stop. I do not slow. I do not quit. My steps may be small, but they are daily. And my identity is no longer for sale. It is sealed in action. It is forged by habit. It is anchored in repetition. When you act while feeling nothing, you are not failing. You are becoming. You are moving deeper into power. You are now building a foundation that the world cannot shake, because it is no longer based on mood, it is based on mission. From this point on, let no emotion interrupt your progress. Feel it, but do not follow it. Acknowledge it, but do not obey it. And soon, the emotions that used to derail you will submit to you. They will bend to the new man you have become. You are not a machine, but you are not a slave either. You are a spiritual being, designed for dominion. And the more you act in defiance of emotion, the more your subconscious accepts that you are no longer the man who quits. And that is how cycles are broken, not by new emotion, but by new decisions repeated in defiance of the old man. And once the new rhythm sets, emotion no longer resists. It supports, because now it must serve the new pattern you have chosen. Say it aloud one final time. My feelings do not rule me. I act from decision. I persist until the result is done. The old you obeyed comfort. The new you obeys calling. The old you followed passion. The new you follows purpose. And the old you asked, do I feel ready? The new you commands, it is already done. And now your life will rise to obey you. Part 7. The decision principle. Finish what you begin or start the cycle. Again, there is a moment when every man must decide. Not feel, not hope, not wait. Decide. And until that decision is made, fully, finally, with no room for retreat, his life will remain on repeat. The cycle will continue. The promises will collapse. And time will pass him by. Every time you begin something and fail to finish it, you are not just delaying success. You are teaching your subconscious that quitting is permitted. And once that lesson is planted, it grows. It grows into hesitation, into doubt, into paralysis, and one day the idea of finishing will seem foreign to you. The world remembers only those who complete. The man who stops halfway is buried in silence, his work forgotten, his potential wasted. Because success does not reward starters, it crowns finishers. And only the man who sees the work through to the end will ever command power in this life. You do not fail because you lack talent. You fail because you lack finality. You leave the door open, you entertain retreat, you begin with enthusiasm, but no decision. And so when the pressure rises, you still see the exit. And the part of you that has not committed walks through it. You must now learn the law. Decision is power. And not decision today, decision for good. The man who finishes decides once. He does not revisit the contract. He does not question the pain. He does not pause when it gets heavy, because the decision has already been made. Say it aloud now. I complete what I begin, I cross the line, I burn the bridge, I walk in completion. The reason you keep starting over is because your decisions are soft. They are emotional, they are temporary, they are made for the moment but not fortified for pressure. But a real decision is eternal. It is not based on feelings, it is built on identity and enforced by action. Abraham Lincoln decided. He decided that he would not stop until slavery was abolished and the Union was preserved. He was attacked. He was doubted. He was broken. But he never retreated, because the decision had already been carved in stone. And men who carve decisions do not drift. The indecisive man never builds momentum. He stops and starts. He questions himself. He waits for signs. He checks the weather. And in that time, the decisive man has finished. While one wonders what to do, the other is already on to the next mountain. This is the harsh truth. Every incomplete task drains your power. Every goal half done teaches your mind that you are not trustworthy. And eventually, you stop setting goals at all. Not because you lack vision, but because you no longer believe you will follow through. You must now repair that belief by completion. No more half-built plans. No more empty promises. From this day on, you finish everything you touch. Whether it takes a day or a year, you finish. Because you no longer see options. You see only the line and the act of crossing it. Say it again. I complete what I begin. I cross the line. I burn the bridge. I walk in completion. The man who finishes is feared by the world, because he cannot be stopped by resistance. He does not quit. He does not question. He outlasts opposition, delays, and distractions, because his inner contract is sealed. His actions are law, and life must obey him. This is not about speed. It is about integrity. You do not need to race. You need to endure. You need to stay when others walk away. You need to remain when it no longer feels thrilling, because the man who stays becomes the man who reigns. Let me ask you, how many times have you come close? How many times have you been inches away from breakthrough, but gave up just short of the finish line? And how many years have those unfinished dreams haunted you, not because you failed, but because you never finished? This is the cost of indecision, regret. And regret is the silent agony of the man who knew what to do, but never did it long enough to win. He remembers the moments. He recalls the fire. But the work lies incomplete, and the cycle resets. Not anymore. From this day forward, you must become the man who follows through, not out of hype, not out of pride, but out of obedience to law. Because once you've decided, it is not a matter of if, it is only a matter of when. Every time you want to quit, you must say aloud, I complete what I begin. I cross the line. I burn the bridge. I walk in completion. This is your seal. This is your contract. And once repeated enough times, your subconscious will accept it. It will begin to expect completion. It will build for you the energy, the stamina, the clarity you need, not because the outside changed, but because you did. You are no longer a man who returns to zero. You are the man who finishes the course. You are the man who puts pen to paper and does not drop it until the task is done. You are the man who gives commands and obeys them. You must finish, not because you need praise, not because others are watching, but because your identity is on the line. Every day you finish, you cast a vote for your future self, and soon finishing becomes your nature, your rhythm, your law. And then there are no more cycles. There are only completions. Part 8, the new pattern, obedience, repetition, and the law of completion. The old pattern is dead. The man who delayed, drifted, doubted, and disappeared, that man no longer exists, because today you install a new pattern, a pattern of law, a rhythm of completion, an identity that cannot be broken because it has been forged in obedience and repetition. You do not break a pattern by wishing. You do not escape failure by emotion. You replace the old with new law, and the law must be written, spoken, enforced, and repeated until it becomes unconscious, until it becomes the rhythm of your life, until quitting feels unnatural. Obedience is your new foundation, not to the outside, but to the inner voice, the voice of destiny, the voice that speaks your chief aim aloud in the morning and again before you sleep, the voice that does not ask how you feel. It tells you what is required, and you obey. Say this aloud now. My new identity is fixed. My actions are law. I finish what I begin. I rise by daily repetition. The law of cosmic habit force is not a mystery. It is always working. It is the rhythm of your daily speech, thought, and behavior. And it either works for you or against you. You do not get to turn it off. You only choose whether to use it to rise or allow it to bury you in repetition of failure. If your life has been governed by the cycle of starting and quitting, it is because your habits serve the old identity. But now you have made a new decision. And that decision must be enforced by new habits. And those habits must be repeated without exception. Every morning you wake, repeat your chief aim with intensity. Speak it aloud as if your life depends on it, because it does. Your future obeys your repetition. Your mind is listening. And what it hears daily becomes what it believes, becomes what it expects, becomes what it creates. Every day you act on your plan, whether the task is large or small. There are no more 0 days. There are no more negotiations. You move, you build, you obey, because your word is now law. And your behavior is no longer emotional, it is structural. Every night before sleep, you speak your aim again. You affirm who you are. You reject the old man. You declare the man you are now becoming. You no longer drift into darkness. You command your subconscious before it carries you into the world of dreams, because now you plant only what you want to harvest. Say it again with me. My new identity is fixed. My actions are law. I finish what I begin. I rise by daily repetition. Let us speak plainly. The world does not reward the man who is talented. It rewards the man who is consistent. And consistency is no longer a struggle when it becomes your nature, when you no longer consider stopping, when you have closed the door to return. This is how empires are built, not by bursts, not by hype, but by lawful repetition. Rockefeller spent years moving in silence, structured, obscure, unseen, while the world laughed or ignored him. But when his rhythm matured, his wealth exploded. Because he obeyed law before he received reward. You must do the same. You are not behind. You are not late. You are simply in a new season. And now you install the structure that makes success automatic. You wake at the hour you declared. You move without question. You complete your work, you repeat your vision, and the law begins to serve you. There is no more waiting, no more emotional reset, no more new year, new you. There is only this, the man you chose to become now, and that man finishes. That man is dangerous to failure. That man walks with fire. That man is immovable. Let it be known, you have installed the pattern of success. You have chosen obedience. You have chosen repetition. And now the law must yield. You no longer ask for results. You expect them because you have earned them through silence, through decision, through daily action, through mental dominion. The results are no longer an accident. They are the fruit of identity. This is the pattern that does not fail. And every man who has followed it, Carnegie, Edison, Ford, Lincoln, Schwab, has become greater than his origin, not because of luck, but because of law. So speak it aloud once more. My new identity is fixed. My actions are law. I finish what I begin. I rise by daily repetition. And now walk in completion, walk in law, walk as the man who never starts over again.